welcome to Beyond Belief Sobriety and Talking Smart. And today we'll be talking smart with Arthur Shanker, the National Outreach Liaison for Smart Recovery, and my co-host here for this series of the about the people and tools of smart recovery. And last week when we were talking, I asked Arthur if we could talk, if we could have an episode about motivational interviewing and motivational enhancement therapy, which is a part of the tools used in smart recovery. And he agreed to do that. So that's what we're going to be talking about today: motivational interviewing and motivational enhancement therapy, and how that applies to smart recovery and what we do here. So, Arthur, how you doing? Thank you for being
Good,
here again.
good. How about you, my friend? Good to
I'm
see
doing.
you. It's
Oh
cold.
yeah,
It's cold.
it's very cold. It's very cold. I know. I'm kind of staying away from outside. I'll be working in here doing the podcast all day, but so I'm still getting more and more interested in smart recovery. It's like the more I learn, the more I want to learn. And this topic today was something that I've been interested in from what you have mentioned in the past about how you approach your meetings as a facilitator, and also as I watch you interact with people during the meetings. And I'm like thinking to myself, how does he do this? How does he know to do this? So, I mean, can you talk? Can you help us understand what motivational interviewing is, what motivational enhancement therapy is, and how this fits into the SMART program?
I can. We're basically use three different uh, models of therapy, parts of them. I mean, obviously, a lot of good number of us are not professionally trained
Mm-hmm.
or have gotten degrees in these particular areas, but we do use concepts from like three basically different modalities. One of them is cognitive behavioral therapy, which one of them is rational motive behavioral therapy, and the other one is motivational enhancement therapy. So,
Okay.
okay, and I think to really explain it, you have to kind of start with all of them
Okay.
and kind of get into it. Rational motive behavioral therapy kind of breaks down. This was created by Albert Ellis back in the 1950s. We still use tools from rational motive behavioral therapy. You've heard us do, and we've even gone through it on one of our shows, the ABCs.
Right.
That came from rational motive behavioral therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And let's break that down real fast. Rational motive behavioral therapy is rational, the way you think, influences the emotive, the way you feel, which influences the decisions you make and the choices, and therefore your behavior. Okay? Now, cognitive, that was done, as I said, in the 1950s. In the 1960s, Aaron Beck created cognitive behavioral therapy. He takes those three, or that breakdown of REBT, rational motive behavioral therapy, and says basically it all happens at the same moment. It's not
Mm.
like he doesn't separate them, but they are still there. And and of course, CBT stands for cognitive behavioral therapy. The way you think will influence the choices you make in the behavior. Okay. Now, now we get into motivational enhancement therapy. That basically is um, that most people really inside of themselves have the answer to most of their problems. Um, and what when we use what you're talking about, the motivational interviewing, that helps bring out from that person their own answer to the problem. You know, it, instead of us saying, "I believe you have an issue, you have a problem, and this is what I think your problem
Right.
is,"
And this is what you should do.
and
Yeah.
and sit there and basically tell them what it is. Well,
Right.
we don't tell people what to do.
Right.
Um, we don't want to. We don't give any advice. So it's like we're not going to tell you what to think. It's just, but we do suggest that we want to change that thinking.
Right.
Okay. And with motivational interviewing, you can get people to all of a sudden see some of that. Now, um, how does that work? Well, um, you have a person that, and there's a couple of parts to motivational interviewing. So and basically it's like becoming a newspaper reporter or a
Mhm.
TV reporter
Mhm.
or an interviewer
Mhm. Mhm.
because you don't want to ask questions that are closed-ended, meaning
Right.
that they can only answer yes or no. Now, I've done that on occasion, but it was to make a point. But
Mhm.
there was always a preceding uh, open-ended question and a after motive open-ended question.
Right.
So they kind of all but they don't go really hand in hand because the court system is really funny. If you go into the courts, one side is going to say, "Were you at this location at this time?"
Mhm.
That's yes or no,
Right. Right.
right? The other
Right.
side, they don't want you to explain. They don't want you to. They just want yes or no. You've heard this in congressional hearings. Just answer this question, yes or no. And of course, the other side's always trying to get you to make the explanation so you can kind of make your defense why you were there.
Right.
The other side is asking the open-ended questions: is why were you there? What
Mhm.
prompted you to be at that location? Well, that's the side we're on. We want to know the who, what, why, where, and how,
Okay.
and ask those type of questions.
Okay.
Um, Now, what goes along with all this is what they call reflective listening or active
Mhm.
listening
Mhm.
or empathic listening.
Right.
Those are all three basically the same thing. So, and when we do that, so that's really what we want to do. Now, what is reflective listening? Let's start with that. Okay. So somebody comes into the meeting and you ask them to check in and they say something and you have an idea, you want to ask them some questions. Well, the first thing you'd want to do is ask permission if you can
Right.
ask some questions, get a better understanding. And then what you want to do is say, I this is what I understand you said. You want to basically repeat back to them what your understanding is of the statement they made. And sometimes they say that was it, or sometimes they say no, I meant something different.
Mhm.
We know in just general conversation, how many times have you talked to somebody and you said and you gave them a response and they said, but that's not where I was. I meant to say something else.
Right.
That's not
Right.
what I mean. Well, we want to get that understanding. That's what reflective listening
Okay.
is to so you're reflecting it back. You're
Right.
trying to see it to make sure you understand what it is that they're saying.
Right. So you
And
actually
from
kind
there,
of repeat what they said in a way
mm-hmm,
back to them. Mhm.
mm-hmm. And if they agree with it, then you can start asking some of those questions.
Okay.
Now, what happens when we do that? Well, sometimes it really brings out, and the people all of a sudden go, "Wow, I never thought of it that way. I never realized this is what I said." And when they hear it repeated back,
Mhm.
and when they hear the question, right,
Mhm.
in the way you're asking, it opens up another window up here
Right.
where all of a sudden they say, "Wow, I never heard it." He says, "I know I've said that so many times, but I never heard somebody else say it back to me." And it
Mhm.
made sense because when you say it back, all of a sudden they hear something that they didn't even realize they were saying
Right. Yeah. Yeah,
coming from
that's different.
somebody else.
Mhm.
So, and then we started wanting to ask those questions because you can get a world of information from that. And it helps them see for themselves exactly where that comes from. Now, again, if you don't have the two elements working together, it doesn't work.
Right.
Because if you understand, if you don't ask them this is what they're talking about, and you start asking them questions that really had nothing to do with what they were saying,
Right.
it doesn't make it make sense then. You're going off onto a tangent.
Right.
So you want to, and the other thing with motivational interviewing is it helps people stay focused.
Yeah.
So many times when I've done different exercises, like if we've done a hierarchy of values,
Mhm.
for instance, which we've talked about in the past, Um, a lot of people start talking about their values, and the minute they say, uh, "Well, my number one value is my pet," and then they all start going off on all about their pet.
Right.
Well,
Right.
I don't want. We don't want to have them going off. We just say your value is
Right.
your puppy dog.
Now the next one.
Yeah. Now let's go next. So you also so it's also a way of not letting them
Sure.
drift off into other areas because you want
Yep.
to keep again. It's a way to keep
That
people
is so nice because
focused.
people will do that. That's just what people do.
hmm
Hmm.
So people will. So you want to keep them focused. Now, when they check in, I let them go.
Yeah.
They can
Yeah.
go
Right. It's their
they can go to
time.
left field, right field. They can go out of the ballpark if they want. I don't.
Hmm.
It's just a question of that. But when you want to get into the specifics, you want them to stay focused on where you want to take them. And it's kind of you've heard in on TV and court TV and all those and all like Law and Order and all those shows.
Hmm.
You you're leading the witness. You're leading the witness. Well, in a way, maybe we are, but that's okay because nobody's on trial here.
Right. Right.
We just want to bring them to a place of reality
Right.
and a reality that they may not have recognized that
Hmm.
was there. And again, it's like, for instance, if your belief is that alcohol and drugs would would be a good thing. You have an activating event, and it's something negative to you. Your belief about it is a negative event. I don't deserve this. I This is wrong. It makes me feel lousy. Um, and my belief is that if I drink, and we'll use alcohol as the example here. If I drink, it'll make me feel better. This could go for food. This could go for uh, gambling. It could go for drugs. I mean, you can take it to all the different maladaptive behaviors.
Right.
But your belief system tells them this. And then you might want to ask is what makes you think that what that belief is true?
Hmm.
Is there any way that possibly could that belief be something else? Is it a true belief? Is it a kind belief? Is it some? What else does this belief tell you? And you want to take them around to a point where all of a sudden they think, "Wow, that belief may not be what I thought it was,"
Hmm.
and help them change the way they view it. And but it's them realizing that because of the questions you're asking.
Right. Right. I would think it's good to know to understand this for, even if you're not facilitating the meeting, but to understand why maybe the facilitator is talking to you the way that they are and asking these questions so that you can understand that they're really trying to get a little bit deeper into what's
hmm
going on, help you realize what's going on, I guess.
hmm And if we don't understand it, it makes it tougher for us to get through.
Right. Yep.
Because again, you could be going off into a different area that they're not discussing. Now,
Right.
some people have trouble with different things. Like yesterday, I was doing a meeting, and a lady was asking. We were doing kind of a hierarchy of values,
Mhm.
which when you really get down to the bottom line to that, when you get through, it's supposed to motivate you to see something a different way and to
Mhm.
maybe figure out that, wow, what I've been doing has been interfering with my values and and putting them into a place that's almost like non-existent anymore, like taking them and putting to the side, uh, and putting your drug of choice, whatever that may be, up at the top because that's what you believe in. And then ask it kind of in that same question was how how do you build motivation? How do you get motivation? So we go right back to that.
Mhm.
And sometimes you have to figure out a way to ask. So I would ask. So I changed with this particular person yesterday. It was like I was doing a meeting for within a treatment center, and I asked. So when that question was asked, and we kind of were going through the hierarchy, that wasn't getting it
Right.
because you have to be aware of what they're understanding. So I went back and asked, well, let me ask you this. What happened that motivated you to want to get help and say, I want help?
Mm-hmm.
Now I've got them talking about the negative stuff that was going on in their life that created a scenario that they wanted to get help.
Mm-hmm. By taking a
And
look at the risk, is
well,
it the
it's right. It's putting in there not just the risk. What actually happened? This is more the
okay,
cost.
okay, the cost.
Okay,
Okay,
this is really the cost. Um, because we went through the other two
right.
last week. So, but all all these tools come into play though when you're doing motivational interviewing.
That's what I'm thinking. Is that if I really wanted to know how to use motivational interviewing, I would just use these tools. I would use either the cost benefit analysis tool. I would use the risk reward tool to help people, just walk people through that and ask the questions to help them, get that
That's
information out
well,
there.
that's one part of it. But let's take something that really that you could use, but really isn't a tool. So, what if somebody's really heavy struggling and says, "I just don't see a way out. I don't see a way that I can't that I'm never going to drink,
Mm-hmm.
and that I must drink every day." The word "must."
Right.
Okay. So, what if you start asking them, well, what if I gave you $100? Could you stop for a week?
Mm.
But nah. I said, how about 500?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How about 1,000? What about 1,000? If I gave you, would that help you be able to stop? So I could go on and on and on.
Right.
It get to some big money, like 50,000 for a month or something
million
like,
dollars or
or a million. What,
yeah.
and uh, and then when they say, yeah, for that I will stop.
Yeah.
Well, bottom line is what you're doing is you're saying then the next thing is then we're not really debating whether you can stop or not. We're just debating how much it'll take to help you stop, aren't we?
Yeah, what's
Now,
your
see, that's where
motivation?
that yes or no question may come
Mhm,
in.
mhm.
But again, it's them realizing that's what's going on. Let me give you a really good example of how that what happened was. So I
Yeah.
had a couple that came into a meeting once, and there's the wife and the man side by side, and the wife really wanted to see the her husband stop drinking, and and he says, you know, I really like drinking. I just want to keep drinking. So I went through that scenario with the money, and I got up to 50,000 for a month, and the guy says, yeah, I can do that, you know. And I looked, and my next question is, well, you see that lady sitting next to you? Is she worth 50,000?
Mm, mhm.
Made him think.
Right, right.
Took it back to something else. But you have to really listen. That's where that reflective listening comes in. And
Mhm.
that's where that, again, empathic listening. And, now there was another time where I kind of used both an open ended and once a closed ended in between, where there was a lady in a treatment center. And, and I asked the question, like, what motivated you to come in? And she said, all this stuff that went on. Um, And she says, I had this a year of sobriety or 2 years or whatever amount of time it was. And she says, and I relapsed.
Mhm.
And I said, well, what was the activating event? And what was your belief about it? Well, it was this. And my belief about it was that I just wanted to escape and find that euphoria
Right.
that I once felt when I drank. My next question was, did you find the euphoria? The answer was no.
Mhm.
My next question, very quickly right after that, was, what did you find? She said, I found all that negative stuff, and look where I am
Right. In treatment. Mhm.
in treatment. So, it's a way of getting them to open their eyes to their own issues.
Mhm. So
So,
I'm just kind of looking at some materials actually. I was just looking through. So a lot what you're talking about of everything is on the smart website. and I'm looking at what they call ORs, um, open open-ended
Open-ended
questions,
questions.
affirming responses, reflective listening statements, and summary statements, which is, I guess, part of the communication
Hmm.
style that you use in motivational interviewing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, open-ended questions. Number one, affirmations. You always want to, if you can, you always want to be able to give an affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like you're understanding this. I really think you're coming along really well. You're really doing
I
great.
notice you do that, and I did
Do you
not
notice how much
understand.
I do that?
Yes, you do that. Okay, and that's like it's like you're giving a reward. It's like you're good. You're doing a good job, and it helps them feel better about maybe doing getting more
It
in there.
helps
It makes them feel
motivate them to
comfortable.
keep on going.
Right. Okay. Okay. That makes
Okay?
sense to me. That makes
Yeah.
total sense to me.
So that's what the affirmations are about.
Yep.
And they can come in right out of the middle of that interview. You're
Yep.
doing really, really well. You want to give those affirmations. And we also want people to give themselves their own affirmations. How many times have you maybe heard in going into uh, whatever meetings you were going to? I'm a
Uh-huh.
loser.
Right.
I want to die.
Sure.
Um, uh, I'm a failure.
Mm-hmm.
It's, okay, might want to ask there. If somebody says I'm a failure, what successes have you had in your life,
Mm-hmm.
and how many successes have you had? Well, if you've had successes, you can't be a failure,
Right. Right.
right? A failure is somebody who just never succeeds.
Right.
So so again, you use the motivational interviewing to bring that out. So once they realize that, that's like giving them an affirmation. Of course, I
Mm-hmm.
can be successful. Of course, I succeeded in things.
Yep.
So again, all these things come into play. Um, if when you talk about cost benefit analysis or risk reward, um, what what has it cost you? What are the costs that you had? Even when you're presenting the tool, what
Mm-hmm.
costs have you had? Okay, here's your costs. What else are you putting at risk? Now they're thinking, what else could go wrong
Mm-hmm.
if I
Mm-hmm.
continue with the behavior?
Mm-hmm.
So again, all the motivational interviewing takes you into helping them realize what could be at stake or what could the future hold. Like if you continue with your behavior, where do you see yourself in a year or five
Right.
years?
Right. Right. Um, it seems like to me like all this stuff just seems because you've been doing it for so long, it's second nature to you. But if I were like a new facilitator, what should I have in front of me to know to remind me? I guess I could have this ORS deal in front of me. I mean, do you have to? How do you get to the point where you're at now, where it's just kind of second nature? Because in the beginning, it seems like it would be to even going through the training and so forth to facilitate a smart meeting to me seems like a I don't know, it's intimidating. It'd be intimidating to do that because I'm like, gosh, can I remember to give those affirming responses? Can I remember to ask these questions that are open ended? Am I really listening to this person? I mean, this is I guess you get used to it after you do it for a while, but it seems
That's why we have training.
right, right,
And that's the whole point of the training, is to show you how to do this. Now,
right.
does it take time? It's just like anything else, is practice,
Sure.
practice, practice.
Right.
Um, I it's funny because you used one of the acronyms ORS, which is the
Uh-huh.
open-ended questioning and affirmations and reflective
Mhm.
listening and support. Um, I just don't think in terms of the acronym.
Right.
I just it just does come fairly naturally to me
Because you've
that,
been doing it for a long time.
right. But even at the beginning, I never thought of it in terms of wars.
Okay.
It just
Mhm.
then maybe I'm just unique. I don't know, but you'll find that it becomes automatic. That
Right.
it's like the responses aren't, when I say automatic, if the response is automatic with everybody, the same
Right.
kind of response, that's not effective either. You have to gear it to the individual that you're talking to.
But you know what's interesting about this though too? Another reason that this might have been kind of natural for you is, and we kind of talked about this before we started recording, is a lot of this is like good business practices for managing a team and managing employees. So if you've run a company before, I mean, and you're trying to motivate a team to do something or motivate an employee, this is the way that you would communicate with them. This is the way that you would try
And it's
to.
and it so happened I was in the corporate world and
Yeah,
I
I
had
know. So
3,000 employees.
I mean,
So
that's what's so funny about CBT is it's like it's used to help us process our feelings and emotions and behaviors and so forth, but also it's actually used in the workplace quite a bit.
well, here, like give you an example. So if I had somebody that I saw was that, that people were coming to me and saying something like, "Well, this person he seems not to be able to get this right or do this
Uh
a
huh.
certain way
Uh
or
huh.
whatever." Well, I may have a talk with that person, and I would say, at first, I would give the affirmations. You are doing so much, so well. It's unbelievable. So, how do you think we could change? How do you think we can change
Right.
this to make it a little bit better?
Right.
And now I've got them thinking about what can they do to make it without pointing it right at them. I
Mm-hmm.
make it more of a us, it's a group do that. And you're right. It's another way of motivational interviewing just comes automatic when you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Now you could
Yeah.
tell somebody what to do and say, "Here's what I want you to do, and I want you to change this right away." Well, you're going to get immediate resistance. You're going to get, "Who are you to tell me what to do? I'm in the bakery shop, and you're sitting up here in an executive office. What do you know about baking?"
Right. Right. Right.
So, so it's a question of getting them to see things for themselves
Mm-hmm.
and to want to make those changes to make it better for the people they're serving.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it goes right back to customer service. It goes right
Right.
back to do it, but but don't. But if you make it more like an accusation, like you're doing this wrong, let's correct you.
Mm-hmm.
That's not taken real well sometimes. People
Right.
say, "Oh, of course I can take criticism."
Yep.
A lot of people don't take it that real well.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so when you put in those affirmations, tell them how really good they're doing.
It means
If
a lot.
somebody, like somebody that, um, if there's people out there that you're communicating with, um, and they're saying, "Well, I keep making it 30 days, and then I have a lapse or a relapse."
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's great that you're doing those 30 days. Wow. How does those 30 days make you feel? What happened during those 30 days? Was a better way of living? Was it that? Oh yeah, and you get them to talk about how great those 30 days were.
Right.
Well, what if we made it 31?
Mm-hmm.
What
Yep.
if we made it 32? Is give them incentives to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Another part of on the website that I was looking at is another acronym, DEARS. Develop discrepancy, express empathy, amplify ambivalence, roll with resistance, and support self-efficacy.
I do not use, and you understand something. You've got somebody here you keep saying is such an expert. I
Right.
do not use a
Any of
lot of
those.
the any of those.
Right.
I look at it that I have a certain amount of tools that I know very well. I know,
Right.
and that I did, and let people pick what they want to use.
Okay, that makes sense.
If this one makes sense, I have a lot of people that come in that they want to use the one that we call. They keep calling it dead, so I want to call it deeds.
Uh-huh.
Um, but because I think why use a negative word?
Right.
But
Yeah,
uh,
it
but
is
that's
pretty
what they're but that's what they're spelling out. Dead,
right, right.
DEADS. but it can also be deeds.
Right.
Yeah. So it's you'll find that a lot of our tools have other tools that are mixed into that one tool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's like they take a word like deeds. The first word is delay or deny,
Yep.
right? And then you have the second letter E is escape.
Yep.
And then you have the third letter A. It goes right back. Take action.
Yeah.
You see, deliberate, dispute, it goes right back to disputing like an unhealthy belief.
Yeah.
Um, and then S is how does that support you?
No, but
You see,
I just find this also so interesting because it's like you once you understand just a little bit, you recognize that there's a lot more to it. It's a lot more complex. I mean, it's complex, but it's simple. I mean, it's like you said, there's 14 tools, but that doesn't mean I have to use every single for all 14 tools. There's some I might not ever use, you know?
right
There might be two or three that take care of pretty much everything I need, you
here,
know?
let's put it this way: if you use DIBS, disputing irrational beliefs. Now
Uh-huh.
we're getting away from saying irrational. We're saying
Yeah.
unhelpful or unhealthy. So we
Yeah.
have to maybe change it to dubs,
Yeah.
disputing unhealthy beliefs.
Yep.
But if you think about that, disputing unhealthy beliefs, wow. Well, if we do the ABCs, what do you think the D is in the ABCs?
Right.
It's
It's just
disputing the
beating it.
unhealthy belief.
Right. Right.
The one that either takes you to using the consequence or it doesn't.
Yeah.
So the tools are intermingled.
Right.
So if I'm using the ABCs correctly, I don't have to use dibs
Right. Yeah,
because
that makes
dibs is really the
sense.
same thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm disputing it, and no matter how many ways we look at it, this is my personal opinion. No matter how many ways we look at it, the one thing that I think there's several things, but the one thing that a couple of things. Let me take it back. A couple of things we want to be able to do. One is enhance people's motivation to
Mm-hmm.
continue on, to be able to get them motivated, to help them get that motivation and how to stay motivated and how to build on that motivation. The second thing we want to get there is by changing those beliefs. That if their belief is that I cannot live without alcohol, that's their belief. And that the only thing that's going to motivate them to do is keep drinking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we want to help them clarify, reframe the thinking, so that they can change some of those unhealthy beliefs, which in turn will say maybe this isn't a good idea to do this drug of choice, which
Mm-hmm.
in turn will motivate them to keep on going because they're going to find some positive things happening in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of all work together.
Yep. Kind of off the topic, but it was on my brain, and I wanted to ask you about this idea of using distraction to change a thought or I guess I would call it more like a mental condition. Say like anxiety. If you're feeling a lot of anxiety, and you were suggesting like a little tool of counting backwards from 100 by sevens,
Hmm.
and I was actually trying that the other day, and I remember
And if
you
you're
mentioned
trying it, you failed.
I did fail basically because I'm not good at math. It was hard.
So
It was
you,
hard. It was hard to do that, but I remember you saying it was hard. It was supposed to be hard.
if it
So
was
what is the
easy, if it was easy, it wouldn't work.
I know. So is the deal like okay? So I'm thinking like I was trying to look up. Okay, anxiety. Basically, you're worried about something. So a lot of times you do have something on your mind, right? It's just that you need to and you're trying to distract it, right? You're just trying to.
Which comes from a thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, or your thought about something, whether it be in the present or in the future,
Right.
or something that happened in the past that you're still dealing with,
Right.
and you get very anxious about it.
Uh
If you
huh.
just say, if you just say, I don't want to get anxious today. Please help me not get anxious. The first thing
Mm-hmm.
you're thinking about is getting anxious.
Yes.
That'll
Right.
create
Right.
anxiety
Right.
right
Right.
there.
Right. 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 Right.
Okay, because now you're worried about can I not do it?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So point is that it's usually taking a negative thought,
Uh-huh.
and that negative thought just starts magnifying itself,
Yeah.
and to a point where you're beside yourself. What if I did this? What if I did this? How could this work differently? Could I have said this? Could I have done that? I mean, and it goes on and on and on. So, so the way to do that is distraction, but that's also you also use distraction for having a thought of using
Right.
or a urge to use.
Hmm.
Okay, you also want to use distractions there too. So actually, what
Okay,
I
that
what I
makes
suggest for
sense now.
anxiety can actually also
Refer.
do that, because what we know we can't do is we really can't sit there and think of two things at the same time.
Yep. This is
And and,
interesting.
and what's really tough to do is if somebody says stop thinking about that, it doesn't work real well
Right.
because
Right.
because people just don't stop thinking about something. Okay,
No.
but also thoughts can come out of nowhere. We don't always think ahead what our next thought's going to be. All of a sudden they just appear,
Right.
right? And it could be something that you saw, it could be something you heard, so it could be whatever that created it.
Right.
It could come out of nowhere. You could just say it's a hot day today. Wouldn't it be nice to sit down and have a beer?
Right.
And
Yes.
then
Yeah.
5 minutes later you say, then 5 minutes later you're actually sipping on a lemonade.
Right. Right.
Okay, just a thought comes in, goes out. Okay, but they distract themselves so that maybe a beer wouldn't be such a good idea, but a lemonade sure would be good.
Right.
Okay, so you can distract it, and we want to find distractions. Now, distraction works with anxiety. Like for instance, the reason I came up with those three things, and I just came up with them now. I'm
Uh-huh.
sure I'm not the first one that came up with them.
Right. Okay.
It's just in my mind, I never had heard that before. But when
Mm-hmm.
I started thinking about what can we think about that would do something, well, when it came to that the numbers thing, it's like, well, it's easy to count backwards by fives or
Right.
by twos or by
Right.
ones, but wow, sevens.
Takes some more
I
work.
mean, maybe the first number is okay, 93.
Right.
Okay, now
Now you really have to think.
what plus what plus seven in the 80s
Right. Right.
equals
Right.
93? You
Right.
know, it's
Right.
like you got to think about this.
Yeah.
And I had this. I said, just like you said, I'm lousy at math. That's hard.
It is.
And I said, if it was easy, it wouldn't work
Right.
because it's supposed to distract you from the negative stuff that's causing the negative thinking or the anxiety.
Yep. See, now this is bringing me up to something else that I remembered from a meeting. This whole idea of distraction, I'm finding really interesting. So there was a discussion that someone said, okay, is this okay? I'm not going to phrase it correctly, maybe, but this is the deal. Bottom line was that someone's thinking about using, and the advice that they've been given in the past is to call someone. Well, then someone said, well, if you're going to call someone, you've already decided not to use. So, and I say, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because if I'm going to use, I'm just going to use. I'm just going to go drink. I don't, if I'm going to call you and say I'm thinking about drinking, I've already decided I'm not going to drink. However, couldn't that also be a distraction? Like I could just call someone
Mm-hmm.
and talk about baseball or
So
football.
the idea is that would be a distraction. But if you've
Yeah,
already made up your mind, you're
right.
going to do it. What you don't want to do is have somebody else talk you out of it.
Okay. Yeah,
That's the
yeah. If I've
reason.
decided, you're
So
not going to talk
so
me out of it.
right, that I don't want you to talk. I don't want anybody to talk me out of it. So I'm not going to call anybody. So you
Gotcha.
have people in other programs, and even some of our, and even us.
Sure.
It's like,
Sure.
well, why didn't you call me? Because I didn't want you to
Right.
talk me out of it.
Right.
Yeah, if that worked, there wouldn't be anybody out there drinking or
I know.
drugging.
I know. I know. That's the whole
It,
thing. It's like it's part of the nature of addiction. Is once what for whatever reason, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it. You don't want anyone talking you
no,
out of it.
no, of course, we always talk in terms of choice. You have a choice
Right.
that if
You
you can
do.
choose to take a drink, you can choose not to take a drink.
Right.
And I had somebody once who said, when I'm ready, when I want to go out and do dope, I don't have a choice.
Right. It feels
I
that
just go
way.
do it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's so, and he believed that.
Mm-hmm.
Except when I said to him, I said, when you say that you don't have a choice, isn't that making a choice?
Mm-hmm.
You're choosing not to have a choice.
Yep.
That's making a choice. People, it's again, it's reframing the thinking and getting them to
Right.
understand it. It's like turning somebody's, it's like being a neurosurgeon. Wouldn't it be great if all of us could be neurosurgeons and we can just cut off the top of somebody's head, just and reach inside and turn their brain 180,
Mm-hmm.
not 360, you're back where you started, but just turn it around. So that way their thinking goes into an opposite direction.
So there's also a difference then between having a thought or urge to drink or use and making a decision, I'm thinking.
Well, the
If
difference
I've
of
made
a
a
thought,
decision to do it, it's all
right?
done.
But a thought usually is what it says. It's a thought,
It's just a thought.
and
It's
we
not
can
a
overcome a thought. We can
yes.
okay. The thought can
They
come
just
in
happen. They
and just
happen.
it just happens, and it can
And we
go
can
away.
deal with it. We can deal with it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. But when it comes to an urge or a craving, that can actually cause even a more of a physical response.
Right.
That you can start salivating. Have you ever walked?
Right.
Let me ask you this: have you ever walked by a place where they're making hamburgers
Mm-hmm.
and they have the exhaust fan going out, and you smell it as you're walking down the street? You smell this hamburger.
Yep.
What's it do?
Oh, it makes you hungry. It makes you want to eat. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and sometimes you actually are salivating for it.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. No,
There's
I
your there's your
know.
there's your stimulus. The smell stimulated you to all of a sudden have an urge to want to have that hamburger. It
Mm-hmm.
created not just a thought. It created an actual physical response. You're smelling
Right.
it,
Right.
and now you're salivating. So it's like going back almost to Pavlov's dog.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, you ring a bell, and you know that when you hear that bell, there's going to be food. Now,
Yep.
funny enough, you're from Missouri, you're
Mm-hmm.
Kansas City, and I'm sure you've been down to Lake of the Ozarks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and back in the old days, you're not old enough to remember this, but they had in Bagnell Dam, they used to have a place called Dog Patch.
Okay.
Okay, and it was a place that it was great for kids. Amusement areas and shopping
Mm-hmm.
areas and different little things you found in Dog Patch.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things was you put a nickel in a machine, and there's a chicken in there.
Oh,
And the chicken comes out, and there's like a little 3 key type piano. It's like this only three, and it pecks, boom, 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 and some seed falls out to feed the chicken. He eats those 3 pieces of seed, but he knows if he wants to eat, he goes boom, boom, boom on the key. On this
someplace
little
I've seen that
piano.
before. I don't know where. I don't think it was in the Ozarks, but I've seen the
But
dang
but
chicken.
I saw it in the Ozarks. I saw it in the Ozarks. So,
Okay.
but uh, but
Where did
and I
I see
remember.
that? I think it was sometime in the 70s, maybe in Vegas. Could that be possible? I don't know.
Well, there
But
are a lot of chickens there. But in the meantime, it's like but even in Vegas, when a lot of places when they were using coin, now everything is
yeah,
paper.
yes, right.
Okay, everything is paper now,
Right.
basically. But when they were using coin, and some maybe downtown places still use coin, um, but when they use coin, they wanted to have the trough that the coin fell into to be a really loud, clanking, tinny sound.
Yeah. And
So when
remember when
somebody
they
won
used
a
to use the
jackpot,
big, huge
you get
silver dollars?
yeah, and when you hear them drop into there, it
Clink,
stimulates you
clink,
to
clink, clink,
go,
clink, clink, clink.
yeah,
Yep.
and it stimulates you to look over. You say, "Wow, I can win again." It gives you a thought. Let me go put some
Yeah.
money in that machine.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
want to create that excitement.
Yeah.
So
And the same thing if you do have an urge to drink, and I've had this in my time, and it's I guess what the one time I'm thinking about where it was where I came so damn close, I actually walked into the damn liquor store, ready to buy the bottle, and I just had this sense of excitement of like I'm going to get some relief. I'm just terribly excited, and I just got to do this, but I didn't have to do it. And my training at the time was go call someone, and I did, but that means I really didn't want to do it. I really didn't want to drink. I knew I didn't want to drink. I didn't want to drink. And then I called and I talked to the guy, and that was just kind of a distraction, so that now I'm no longer thinking about that thought that was making me feel that sense of excitement. I'm no longer thinking that. I'm thinking about some other stupid thing, whatever we're talking about. And I've noticed the same thing when I've had people call me. It's like we're not even talking about, it doesn't even matter what we talk about. We'll talk about whatever. Talk about whatever you want to talk about. And it just distracts the person, gets their mind into a different place.
It's like if you have a thought or an urge to want to do something, you take a walk, you
Yeah.
go exercise,
Yeah. Yep.
you watch something on TV that you enjoy, you
Yep.
you go play a game, you listen to music.
Yep.
There's there are hundreds of ways to distract yourself, and there's
Right.
subcategories. So let's say you're into artwork. Well, what kind of artwork are you into?
Mm-hmm.
You could draw, you could paint, you could, draw by numbers or paint by numbers. I mean, it
Right.
doesn't matter what it is, but if
Yep.
you're looking at just keeping that brush inside those lines, that's a distraction.
Yeah.
It'll take you away from that negative stuff.
Yep.
And so distractions are really good to use.
Yep.
Um, uh, and all that. Now, what comes out of distractions is one of our tools called a VAXI, a
R-
vital absorbing creative
yes.
interest.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what's that? Well, they usually come from like you want to find something to replace what you thought the drugs or alcohol were doing for you.
Right.
You want to now replace it with something that is healthy for you and good, but it can still give you
Yep.
those hormone releases in your
Yep.
brain
That's so
that
important.
are good, those dopamine
Mm-hmm.
releases and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sometimes it could be again that you create a new or an old hobby, bring that back that you really really enjoy.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, you go, "Wow, this will be enjoyable.
Yep.
I like doing this."
Yep.
And it creates that same reaction. It's like
Yep.
long distance runners get those endorphin
Uh-huh.
things and the dopamine going. Um, uh, Long distance swimmers, I would imagine, people who exercise. Uh, but the same thing can happen just playing chess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're sitting there concentrating on, because when somebody plays chess, how many moves ahead are they?
I know. You have to think quite a bit. In fact, I just played chess with somebody a few days ago. It's a good game. You have to really stop and think.
Because you're not only thinking about what the other person's move's going to be, it's what your move's going to be
Right.
after they make that move.
Right.
So you're almost trying to lead them into making a particular move, so you can make this move, so they can make this move, so you can make
Right.
that move, and finally say checkmate
Yep.
uh, on them.
No,
So you're so
I
you're
really,
concentrating
yeah.
with that. What else are you thinking about?
Yeah, nothing is just that's the focus. That's
You're
the
focused.
focus. Yeah, you really
Yeah,
focused on that.
yeah.
So no, I really am loving this stuff. It's like I say, I'm learning so much, and just from that meeting, I've been using the whole distraction tool, for dealing with whatever is going on. And it's one of those things. It's just going to have to take a lot of practice. I'm going to have to just use that often to get to the point where I feel it's useful. But something else I was going to tell you. So, I'm a peer specialist in Missouri, and I'm coming up on my renewal. So I'm taking my continuing education requirements for to keep my thing, and the class I'm taking right now, it's a 6 part, and I've taken the first part, and it's about motivational enhancement therapy. And I want to tell you, almost everything that we do and the peer study to get your peer support certificate is smart recovery stuff. It's all CBT. It's and there's a reason for that. This is the most recent science. This is what we're using now, and I
Hmm.
just find that so interesting. But and then I was going through my materials too from the my peer training and looking at some of the stuff that we had there, all very similar to what I see in Sharp and Smart. So I just find that so interesting that you know if it's being replicated like that, there's something to this. This is something that works. So it's really pretty exciting.
And again, smart is a self empowerment,
Right.
and and how, if we can, again, if we can help you reframe your thinking
Mm-hmm.
or clarify your thinking, that'll help you make better and good decisions.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So that is cognitive behavioral therapy 101. It's reframing the thinking.
Yep.
Okay. Now the I think even after cognitive behavioral therapy, of course, a lady named Linneman started dialectical behavioral therapy.
Mm.
And I think you heard somebody in the meeting talk about DBT
Mm-hmm.
was helping them.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of went through a little thing about what DBT basically was. They use that mostly for a lot of times emotional upsets.
Mm-hmm.
You can have two opposing thoughts or feelings, like you're happy and you're sad. Well, those are pretty much extremes, but you can have
Right.
both of them. And what you have to realize is that um, there has to be some changes made to balance it all out. But then, if you remember, I think I gave, and I'm trying to remember if it was that meeting. I also gave an example of how two people with with the exact same fact can have two totally different out views or views of that fact, and both of them are correct,
Mm-hmm.
and they're totally opposite. In
Yeah.
that dialectical being totally opposite,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay, so I'll show you that example. So a person is you have a golf course and you got a fence,
Right.
and on one side of the fence there's a cornfield, and the other side of the fence obviously is the golf course.
Right.
And you got a farmer standing on that side of the fence looking at his corn, and you got the golfer over here ready to hit a golf ball. And it starts to pour down rain. What do you think the farmer is saying?
Um, he's glad it's raining.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the golfer is saying?
He's ticked off. He wants to golf. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's ruining my day. It's ruining my
Right.
day. Okay, which one was correct?
Both. Both are right.
Both of them.
Yep.
Same fact.
Yep.
So we have to realize that there may be more than one answer.
Right. Yep.
They can both be correct. Again, it's your
Yep.
perception of what something is and how you react to it.
Mm-hmm. So this week, I'm going to be continuing with taking these courses to get my CEUs going, and I'm also going to be reading the handbook to refamiliarize myself with that. I started going through that actually just last night, and so I might, as I get into this, might come up with something that maybe we can talk about next weekend. Next weekend, unless there's something that you think that we should talk about. But there's so many subjects that could be that are in my mind. We talked a little bit about word exchange and different things, but maybe we can hold and see. Maybe next week, sometime during the week, we can figure out what we want to talk about, or you might have a suggestion. But um, there's a lot to this stuff. I know that in one sense, it's simple and common sense, but
Mm-hmm.
on the other hand, it's like, wow, it's. I guess it's really being more aware of how I want to think, you know, being more aware of my thinking and changing my thinking is basically what I'm
When,
really
when,
trying to do.
when people say, in other programs, they have a higher power,
Mm-hmm.
which is something external,
Right.
right? Doesn't
Right.
matter what the higher power is. It could be the guy upstairs. It could be a doorknob. It could be
Right.
a chair. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but it's something external.
Right.
Sometimes when somebody says something to me about that, I say, well, in smart recovery, we want maybe, and I use the same word now. Not all facilitators will say this. I'm
Right.
probably one of the only ones that say this.
Right.
I said, what we want to do is create a higher self awareness of what you're
I just
thinking.
heard you. That's a very good way of putting it. And I've heard before that as far as we know in science, the most powerful thing in the universe, and this sounds kind of egotistical, but it's the truth, is the human brain. We don't even completely understand it. I mean, it's the most powerful. It's an amazing. We only use small parts of it. So I like the idea of using my noggin.
Well, here, look at it this way. I'm not a scientist. I'm not
Right.
a,
Right.
obviously, I'm not a neurosurgeon or a brain
Right.
specialist. But if you're, if you have a certain behavior that is a negative behavior,
Mm-hmm.
and it does affect the the neurotransmitters in your brain, it's going to create the brain communicating in a different way. If
Right.
you do things that are positive and get away from those psychoactive substances or those things that can change that brain chemistry, then the brain starts again communicating with each other, the different parts of the brain, in a more positive way.
Right. Right.
So it actually does affect the brain chemistry.
Hmm.
But it can cycle back to another direction.
Right. No, that makes sense. So
Yeah,
thanks again. This really has helped me understand better motivational interviewing and how it works with everything else. So it's a great time, great video, and I know it's going to help other people out there too. I can't believe we've done as many of these as we have now. The response has been pretty good, and it's been great. Nice of you to be doing this with us. It's just a super service to put out there for people. So thank you, Arthur. It's been great.
yeah. My
Always look
pleasure.
forward to these conversations.
My pleasure.
So we'll be back at it again next weekend.
See you next weekend.
Okay. Take
Take
care.
care. Have a good week.
Bye.